Hi everyone, I'm Carlos Raldiris, and along with Philip de la Vega, we host the Business Fusion podcast. With the Memorial Day weekend upon us, the podcast is officially on hiatus, but we wanted to make sure we were sharing some content. Over the course of our various interviews with senior executives, we've often asked them the question, what is some advice that you would give to your younger self? What follows are some of the answers given by some of those guests. We hope you enjoy it.
What advice would you have for yourself, for a younger Drew, 24, 22-year-old, starting out, now that you have this type of knowledge?
Yeah. So the team that I have the privilege to lead now, I've got 6 people on my team. They are all in their 20s. So it's actually, I would say the advice that I'd give on this podcast is the same advice I give to the talented people working on my team now. And that is, in your 20s, in my opinion, the most important thing to focus on is your training. It's the most important thing. Are you being developed? Because eventually what's going to happen is, just like the rest of us, you're going to go to sleep and you're going to wake up and you're going to be in your 40s and not know what happened. And you're going to be in a leadership position, and somebody's going to come to you and say, you're now responsible for solving this business problem and leading this team. And that client or that executive is going to look at you, and your team's going to look at you. And whether or not you've had the right training, you're not going to know how to solve the answer. But whether or not you've had the right training is going to show through. There's going to be nowhere to hide anymore. Mm-hmm. And so what I would tell, kind of people starting on their career, don't worry about the money. Don't chase the titles. Don't jump ship from this company to that company just because of that next promotion. Focus on whether or not you're being trained and developed. And if you're being trained and developed, the money, the titles, all of those things will all come later in your career. What you don't want to have happen is get into the mid stage of your career and realize you haven't had that great training, because what is going to happen is you will stick out and you'll stall in your career, and you'll be confused as to why it's happened. And the reality is it's because you kind of chased that shiny penny, if you will, earlier on in your career, versus really focus on getting the right training and the right development. Don't worry about all the fancy stuff. All that other stuff will take care of itself for your career.
I would say find someone to help you work through your career, because you haven't had your career before, but someone has. Whether that's a mentor or a sponsor or a coach. I think a coach is great because that person is actually invested in you personally and professionally. So that's one thing that I would say. Secondarily, I would say, don't be afraid to get to know people that are different from you.
Great advice.
And then third, never stop learning, because things change every day. And, I was a management information systems major, doesn't even exist anymore, right? But I guess they call it information science now.
Yeah. IS or IT.
Or IT, yeah. And, it would be very different today. So I would have to be, I couldn't rely on what I learned in undergrad to go into an IT role today. So it goes back to what you were saying, Phil, about, always being intellectually curious. And I never believe I know everything. Find ways to keep yourself current, because that's how, also another way that you'll be recognized by others in a positive way.
There are a few things I would say to younger Jasons for sure, and I'll keep it to 3, although I know I can have a much longer list. So here are 3. Have the difficult conversations. I'll tell you, my greatest regrets, business or in life, probably are when I didn't have the difficult conversation until it was too late. In our Vistage group, we actually have a saying, and I apologize because I don't remember where it came from, or what speaker brought to us or what have you. So I apologize for that. But we'll often remind each other that everything you want in life is on the other side of a difficult conversation. So have those difficult conversations is 1. 2, don't be afraid even to ask out loud, what if I'm wrong? And to especially ask that question, what if I'm wrong, about the things that you feel deepest and strongest and most confident about, because those are often the things that you've got the blinders on. of potentially being wrong. And I found that asking that question really helps me to be a better, well-rounded person anyways, and to take other people's considerations into, think about how other people are addressing something. And then lastly, and for me, this has been something that I've really had to work on growing over time, and that is be vulnerable. That strength and deep relationships and things really grow at times out of letting go or acknowledging when you need help or when you don't know something. And that's something like Vistage and these groups have really helped to teach me, is that in those moments of being vulnerable is actually when the greatest growth takes place and when the best relationships are built. So I'd go back and tell younger me, it's okay to go do these things.
Great advice.
I guess two things really kind of come to mind. One is it's never too early to start building your network.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked a lot about networking today, but it's never too early to start building that network. I was amazed. I wasn't that intentional about it when I first got started. And in retrospect, I wish I had been much more so. But even to the extent I did it, it's amazing that 5, 10, 15 years later, somebody would pop up that I had met and made an impression on, and something would come out of it from a business standpoint. And so I just don't think you can say enough about building that network, maintaining the network, continuing to work the network. We didn't have LinkedIn back then. I mean, that's a huge tool to be able to continue to build that network and to keep it current. I used to have a paper Rolodex. It's a little bit harder to keep track of people that way. And I think probably the second thing was, I wish I had thought bigger sooner. Thinking big and bold, you may not always be able to hit those marks, but if you think small, you're never going to get past small. And so I think it is important to think big and think bold, be realistic. I mean, I think you need to be able to look in the mirror and know what your strengths and weaknesses are. Most people can figure out what their strengths are, and not too many people want to focus on their weaknesses, but I think it's important to know where your weaknesses are so you can either work around them or work through them, or go get trained to get better at those. Because if you keep training for your strengths, you're going to get very narrow at the end of the day. And I think you need to train for strengths and weaknesses. So I think the big two would be the networking and think big and bold.
I would say, and this is true whether it's for board work or for career work, but it's as early as possible, understand and embrace your superpower. I mean, really, it's one thing to try to improve yourself and to be good at many things and to deliver value, right, where you can. But know what you're good at and know that gift and that blessing that has been given to you and build from there. And don't be afraid to say, this is my superpower. This is how I can make a difference. This is how I can add value in a role, in a family, or at a board. That's what I would do, I think.
Building a network as early as possible. You don't realize how important that is in the beginning. You think you know everything in the beginning, and all I need to know is how to do my job. And my dad always, part of his, get along with everybody and make sure you treat people with respect, is also you just get to know people, get to know what they do and how they do it, and learn through your experiences with others. So that is the biggest advice I would give myself, is learn how to learn how to network early on, build those relationships. You never know how they're going to pay off. And, a lot of getting on boards is still the networking as well. So it becomes important there. And I think just through networking, you learn more as well, about others' experiences, and then you become a better person as well. So that's probably number one.
The answer to that question, I love to say it, it's say yes. Say yes. Say yes to life. Say yes to doing things. Don't be afraid. And life is meant to be lived. And so I would say yes. There's probably a lot more profound things that I would say if I had more time to think about that one. But the short answer is say yes.